How would you react if someone intentionally hurt your child right in front of you during what was supposed to be a joyful community gathering? Not a stranger, not a reckless child, but a respected adult, a leader, someone with power. What if that child had already survived more pain and loss than most adults will ever know, and just when she finally began to smile again, someone decided to shatter that progress with a cruel, calculated act disguised as an accident? That was the moment everything changed for me. The moment I stopped trying to blend into our new neighborhood and started paying attention to the rot hiding beneath its perfectly manicured surface. The moment a volleyball, thrown with precision by a woman who prides herself on perfection, struck my disabled daughter square in the face and sent her sprawling from her wheelchair onto the grass. The moment when silence fell across the park, followed by a collective gasp, and then, worst of all, a smirk. Not an apology, not a hint of remorse, just a fleeting, satisfied curve of the lips that vanished beneath a mask of exaggerated concern. "Oh dear. What an unfortunate accident," she called out, as though the ball had just magically launched itself. But I saw her. I saw the way her eyes narrowed before she threw it. I saw the flicker of something dark, annoyance, disgust, superiority. And I heard her too. She turned to the woman beside her and whispered with a crooked little grin. Ball probably bounced off that crooked face of hers. That woman, that polished queen of the HOA, had just declared war, and she didn't even know it yet. My name is Darren Cole. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked in threat assessment and security operations. I've protected federal officials, de-escalated dangerous confrontations, and navigated the murky waters of human intention. But none of that experience could prepare me for the particular brand of cruelty we found hidden behind the pastel-painted doors and stone-clad mailboxes of Sycamore Hills. 3 years before that day, my life unraveled in an instant. My wife Amira and I were driving home from our daughter Lila's regional piano competition, a night filled with hope, trophies, and the pride only parents of talented children truly understand, when a drunk driver lost control, crossed the median, and changed everything. Amira died on impact. Lila, just 11 years old, survived, but barely. Her injuries were catastrophic. Nerve damage robbed her of sensation in her left hand. Her facial muscles on that side stopped responding, creating an uneven smile, a heavy eyelid, and limited articulation. Her vision in the left eye faded into a blur. For a girl whose life was music, touch, and expression, it was a cruel fate. But she endured. She learned. She adapted. By the time we relocated to Colorado for my new field assignment, she was 14, academically gifted, musically remarkable, and quietly courageous. She had taught herself how to play again, with new techniques, new fingerings, and new resolve. But the scars, physical and emotional, never truly disappeared. We moved to Sycamore Hills after weeks of research. The brochures promised culture, community, diversity, safety, and top-rated schools. Everything a father dreams of for a child trying to rebuild herself. The home we chose was beautiful, with ramps already installed and a music nook just right for Lila's keyboard. It felt like a fresh start. Until we met Veronica Alcott. She was the first to greet us. Well, greet me. She offered a bright smile as we crossed paths near the mailboxes. "You must be the new residents in 14B, she said warmly, extending her hand. But the moment she saw Lila, who had just come up beside me, that smile flickered. It paused. Her eyes, trained for a moment on my daughter's face, quickly darted away. She didn't say hello to Lila, didn't acknowledge her polite wave. Instead, she adjusted her posture ever so slightly, placing me directly between herself and my child. "We maintain very high standards here," she said with a sugary tone. "I'm sure you'll appreciate our focus on aesthetics and harmony." Aesthetics. That word landed heavy. Not safety, not inclusion, not community, just visuals. Harmony, she said. But her version of harmony didn't include differences, didn't welcome scars, and it certainly didn't smile back at a girl whose appearance didn't fit her polished ideal. Lila noticed too. She didn't say anything, but her body language shifted. Her shoulders drooped just a little. Her smile faded just enough to tell me she'd felt the sting. It wasn't the first time. After so many years of surgeries, stares, and sideways glances, she had become a master at reading the things people tried to hide. Micro-expressions, shifts in tone. That moment with Veronica told her everything she needed to know about how our new home might see her. Later that evening, as we unpacked boxes and tried to settle in, I tried to lighten the mood. "Don't worry about her, Junebug," I said. "Some people are just too small to see big hearts." Lila nodded and forced a little smile, but she stayed quiet the rest of the night. The very next morning, we received our welcome basket, a charming gesture on the surface. Local coupons, a neighborhood map, and a handwritten note. But beneath the pleasantries, the message was chilling. Veronica had suggested we visit the community pool in the early morning hours, when it's more peaceful and private. She also noted that the fitness center had a small, windowless room, perfect for those seeking solitude. It was clear. She wanted my daughter hidden. I documented the note and tossed it in the shred bin, but not before scanning it into my personal archive, a habit from my professional life that had already come in handy more times than I could count. A week later came the second message. This time, it was about community events. Veronica thought Lila might feel more comfortable wearing a face covering due to her condition. A suggestion, of course, always framed as concern. A few days after that, she gently wondered if we'd considered backyard privacy panels, so Lila could enjoy the outdoors without the anxiety of unwanted attention. The message was unmistakable. Your daughter's face makes people uncomfortable. But Lila wasn't the problem. Veronica was. She ran Sycamore Hills with the precision of a monarch. Her spa empire, Alcott Aesthetics, specialized in cosmetic perfection. Her brochures featured airbrushed models and slogans like, "Eliminate the flaws, reveal the real you." She surrounded herself with the flawless, curated every HOA meeting with military efficiency, and spoke about maintaining standards, as though beauty were a moral obligation. And she did all of it with a smile so polished it could reflect sunlight. As we settled into our new routine, I responded to each message with cool professionalism, always polite, always brief. But I kept every word, and I began to learn more. From our neighbor, Noah, retired journalist and passionate advocate, I discovered that Veronica had a long track record of quietly driving out residents who didn't match her vision. One family was forced out after building a wheelchair ramp. Another left after their autistic child was excluded from multiple events. Every action disguised as concern, every effort cloaked in civility. But the pattern was clear. She controlled this neighborhood by shaming anyone who didn't fit her polished brand. Despite all of this, Lila remained resilient. When her music teacher invited her to perform at the upcoming cultural showcase, she hesitated, but only for a moment. "I want to try," she told me. "I've been practicing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major with my new fingering. Miss Kwan says it's sounding beautiful." And it was. Every evening the house filled with imperfect, breathtaking music. Her left hand moving with careful control, her expression shifting as she felt every note. She played through pain, adapted techniques, and poured her soul into every bar. The night of the performance, she wore a simple blue dress and swept her hair across her forehead, just lightly enough to soften her left side, but never to hide it. She was nervous, I could tell, but proud, determined. As we entered the community center, I saw Veronica standing near the refreshment table, surrounded by board members. Her smile faltered when she saw us. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and she leaned into the woman beside her, whispering something that made them both laugh softly. Lila saw it too, but she didn't flinch. She took her place after the string quartet, walking with the slight limp that remained from her surgeries. The room hushed. I saw Veronica cross her arms, and then Lila played. Her fingers moved with grace and discipline. What she lacked in standard technique, she made up for in emotion. Every note of the nocturne told a story of struggle, of loss, of triumph. By the final passage, the room was still, breathless, moved. The applause when she finished was genuine and loud, from almost everyone. Veronica clapped twice, smiled tightly, and turned away. Later at the reception, I overheard her near the wine table, saying to a fellow board member, "A valiant effort, I suppose, but the compromises were obvious. Next time, perhaps something a little less ambitious would be more appropriate." Lila was around the corner. She heard every word. I saw it in her eyes. That night, she sat at her keyboard with headphones on, practicing the exact measure that had drawn Veronica's comment, over and over. Tears ran down her cheeks as her fingers moved with steady, painful precision. I sat beside her and placed a hand gently on her back. "Hey, Junebug," I whispered. "You were amazing tonight." She shook her head. "Not according to Mrs. Alcott." "She wouldn't know brilliance if it played a sonata in front of her," I said, keeping my voice calm though my blood boiled. "And tonight, it did." She gave me a small, watery smile, but I could already see the doubt Veronica had planted beginning to take root. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed every interaction, every note, every smirk. Something had to change, and I knew exactly where to start. The day of the annual Sycamore Hills Summer BBQ was one of those golden afternoons that seemed designed for memories. Grills sizzling, kids laughing, bright picnic blankets spread across perfect grass, and the smell of sunscreen mingling with charcoal smoke. Lila was hesitant about going. She'd been quieter than usual since the piano performance, where Veronica's words had cut deeper than she let on. But a few of her classmates had encouraged her to come, promising a relaxed game of volleyball, music, and enough snacks to fill a teenager's soul. I gently nudged her to go, reminding her that life could still offer joy, and slowly, she agreed. That morning she put on her favorite light blue sundress, the one with the embroidered hem, and tied her hair into a loose braid. Her confidence was fragile, but her spirit was still there, flickering like a flame in a breeze. We arrived early. Lila found her group of friends near the volleyball nets that had been set up at the far end of the park. I stayed closer to the grill area, exchanging polite nods with a few other residents, but mostly observing. That was my training kicking in, assessing environments, reading body language, and watching for threats even when none were expected. For the first hour, things went smoothly. Lila was laughing again, cautiously navigating the game, carefully compensating for her limited peripheral vision and partial sensation on her left side. I watched with quiet pride as she spiked the ball, not hard, but playfully, earning cheers from her friends. And then she appeared. Veronica. Wearing crisp white linen slacks, a designer blouse, and sunglasses that covered half her face, she strolled into the youth activity area with all the subtlety of a peacock in a library. By her side was her teenage son Chase, tall, athletic, and visibly uncomfortable with whatever performance his mother was about to deliver. "Why don't you show these kids how a real athlete plays, Chase?" she said loudly enough to draw attention, holding a volleyball out to him like it was a royal decree. He mumbled something about not wanting to interrupt, but she waved it off. "Nonsense. I'm sure they'd love some pointers from a varsity player." The game reorganized reluctantly, and Chase, to his credit, joined with as much humility as he could muster. But Veronica lingered. She didn't leave the area like most parents. She hovered just outside the edge of the court, arms folded, eyes darting, always locking on Lila. I moved a little closer, the muscles in my back tightening. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the moment that would change everything. As the players rotated, Chase moved into position to serve. Lila stood near the front, ready to move if the ball came her way. Then, casually, as though it were the most natural thing in the world, Veronica stepped toward the equipment bag, picked up a second volleyball, and with a flick of her arm that carried all the calculation of a practice gesture, she launched it directly at my daughter's head. Not into the game. Not toward any player. At Lila, at her injured side, and with enough force to knock her sideways out of her wheelchair. The moment that ball hit her, time slowed. Her body twisted in an awkward fall, her arms flailing as she instinctively tried to protect her face. A chorus of gasps rang out as kids rushed to her side. I was already moving. My blood surged hot with protective fury, but I kept my expression calm, my steps even. Years of fieldwork had trained me to respond without showing my emotions. But inside, I was trembling. Veronica's voice rang out with theatrical panic. "Oh dear. These games get so chaotic with multiple balls flying around, don't they?" Her hands were raised in mock alarm, her mouth twisted into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She glanced sideways and whispered to another parent. Poor thing probably couldn't even see it coming with her condition. Maybe sports aren't a good fit for someone with her limitations. Lila was sitting up now, one hand pressed to her face, her eyes shining with tears, not just from the pain, but from the humiliation. I knelt beside her and gently brushed her hair back. "You're okay, Junebug. I'm here. Let's get some ice on that." She leaned into me, trembling, and whispered, "Dad." She did it on purpose. I saw her. She was watching me. I nodded slowly. "I know," I said quietly, "and I'm going to handle it." At the first aid table, a pediatrician named Dr. Neela Shroff, who also happened to be an HOA board member, came over and examined Lila with practiced concern. She didn't need prompting. "That wasn't an accident," she murmured. "I saw the whole thing. Veronica targeted her. You don't need to say anything. I believe you." I thanked her, my mind already spinning with plans. After making sure Lila was resting comfortably and surrounded by supportive friends, I walked across the field toward the woman who had just assaulted my child and pretended it was a game. Veronica stood among a cluster of parents, laughing as though nothing had happened. "Mrs. Alcott," I said evenly, "we need to talk." Her expression didn't flicker. "Mr. Cole, such an unfortunate little mishap, wasn't it? I do hope Lila isn't too shaken. These things can happen, especially with multiple games going on, so many balls in the air." "It wasn't a mishap," I said, my voice flat. "You deliberately threw a ball at my daughter's head." The conversations around us quieted. Parents turned, eyes wide. Veronica's smile stiffened. "That's absurd. I was returning a stray ball to the play area. If your daughter was injured, I'm terribly sorry. But perhaps this illustrates why some children shouldn't engage in certain physical activities." Her words were poison, wrapped in sugar. And they were her undoing. Because in that moment, she exposed her intent. Clear, sharp, and cruel. She didn't see Lila as a child who had survived, adapted, and overcome. She saw her as a blemish, a disruption to the aesthetic she so desperately guarded. I leaned in slightly. "You've just made a very serious mistake. This conversation isn't over, not by a long shot." That evening, as Lila rested with a cold compress, and her favorite movie playing softly in the background. I began laying the groundwork for what would become a full-scale dismantling of Veronica's empire of exclusion. First, I documented the incident in full detail, compiling every note, message, and indirect suggestion she'd sent since we arrived. Then I reached out to Dr. Schroff, who agreed to provide a professional statement. She also gave me access to HOA meeting minutes, records that revealed Veronica's consistent opposition to accessibility upgrades and accommodations. I spoke with Noah again. He connected me with other former residents who had similar stories, each eerily similar in tone, always hidden beneath layers of suggestions and community standards. In the days that followed, I worked with precision. I found records of past lawsuits against Veronica's spa chain, cases settled quietly, involving former employees who'd been let go or denied promotions due to visible disabilities. I spoke with Chase's music tutor, who confided that the boy had been secretly taking piano lessons for years against his mother's wishes. "She thinks music is too emotional," the tutor explained. "But Chase is gifted, especially at helping others. He's even asked about how to help students with hand injuries play better." When I stood before the HOA board a week later, the room was packed. Word had spread. Veronica sat at the center, composed but visibly irritated. "Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes," she said coolly. I nodded and began. I laid out the timeline. I shared the notes, the remarks, the false concern masked as civility. I quoted Veronica's exact words after the showcase. And then, the moment of truth. I played the unfiltered footage of the BBQ incident. Veronica, casually picking up a volleyball, watching Lila, calculating, throwing. The room went silent. "That video is misleading," she snapped, rising from her seat. "No," said Dr. Schroff firmly. "It's accurate. I saw it happen. I examined the injury. There was no other ball in play." The board members stared at Veronica, their expressions shifting. I continued, calmly but firmly, presenting documents showing a pattern of discrimination, records of selective rule enforcement, and statements from neighbors who had been pushed out. "This is not about a volleyball," I said. "This is about a pattern of targeted exclusion, and it ends now." The vote to remove Veronica from office was swift and unanimous. She was suspended pending investigation, and a new committee on accessibility and inclusion was formed, one that included Lila as its youngest and most passionate voice. In the weeks that followed, Sycamore Hills began to change. Ramps were installed where needed. The pool added adaptive equipment. Community events began, including ASL interpreters. The story spread beyond our neighborhood. Lila was invited to speak at a regional conference on disability inclusion, and her piano adaptations caught the attention of national educators. One afternoon, a letter arrived without a return address. Inside was a clipping from a local newspaper about Lila's music program, and a single sentence handwritten beneath it. "Perfection isn't what I thought it was. Thank you." Lila read it quietly. "Do you think I should respond?" "That's up to you," I said. She thought for a long moment, then penned a single line. "It's never too late to learn a new technique. Lila Cole, the woman who once tried to humiliate my daughter, had instead lit the spark that helped her rise, not just as a musician, but as a leader. And in doing so, she exposed a truth far more powerful than polished smiles or manicured lawns. That strength lies not in appearance, but in persistence, in adaptation, and in the courage to stand firm when the world expects you to disappear."